From WAMU 88.5 at American University in Washington, welcome to the Politics Hour starring Tom Sherwood. I'm Kojo Nandi. Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a contributing this early because our guest today is none other than the mayor of Washington, D.C., Muriel Bowser. Mayor Bowser, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you. And we gave out the number, so if you have questions or comments for the mayor, you can start calling now. You can also go to our website, kojoshow.org, watch the live video stream of this broadcast, and ask a question or make a comment. You can send us a tweet at Kojo Show or email to kojo@wamu.org. Tom Sherwood.
Mayor, welcome to the program.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. There's so many things to talk about, but we have some breaking news on two matters. Our understanding is that you are going to allow to go into effect without your signature the pay-to-play legislation that the council passed that would limit contributions to political people from government contractors or people seeking government contracting. I understand the deadline was 5:30 last night. Is that correct, that this is going to go into effect without your signature?
The council moved a piece of campaign finance legislation that I didn't sign yesterday. We've talked about campaign finance reform I think every time I've ever talked to you here at the Kojo Nandi Show.
You created the Baker
yes,
the
and
ethics board.
I think you know kind of my general views on campaign finance, and that is that I highly value how candidates disclose. I highly value that we have a simple process that everybody understands, and we have had a number of campaign finance changes over the years, including having publicly financed campaigns that I supported and funded in a recent budget in ways to make sure that we have a fair system. I don't think the council landed in the right place. I think it's confusing in a lot of ways, and there may be opportunities to fix some of the things that I think are problematic.
Okay, thank you. The other breaking news is you've just announced that you're going to have the D.C. Police Department officers on patrol carry the oxycodone, the opioid,
naloxone.
Naloxone.
I know it's kind of a tongue twister.
Right. But how will you roll that out? Everyone going to start carrying it?
Well, let me just say, first of all, that we want as many people as possible to take advantage of all of the programs and services that we have in place to deal with the opioid epidemic and come in for treatment. And there are many different ways that we are trying to meet people where they are so that they are getting the treatment that they need. Our Fire and Emergency Management Service has been carrying naloxone and have it available on scenes when they're called. And now we want to also put it in the hands of our police officers. So our Department of Health will make a big procurement of the drug. We will train our officers, and we will phase the deployment. We'll try to get it in the hardest hit areas first, and we will make sure that they're in all of our police cars and in the hands of our officers who are on foot.
Thank you.
Well, one of the things we do not want to do is have our Maryland and Virginia listeners think that we're not thinking about them. And one of the things we'll be asking the mayor about later is about her relationship with the council. But I wanted to talk a little bit about Governor Hogan, who also won re-election in Maryland as a Republican. And in his inaugural address, he seemed to be suggesting, A, that he's really good at reaching across the aisle at the opposition, and B, that apparently he's thinking maybe, he didn't say this, but I inferred it, he may be thinking of running for, higher office.
Well,
he had former Montgomery County Executive Isaiah Leggett, a Democrat, as one of the people who spoke at his.
Well, Ike Leggett welcomed the people there to Annapolis. I watched the governor's inaugural address out in the cold. He mercifully did not talk too long. It was only 18 minutes. But he won. He has a 70% approval rating. The mayor would appreciate that. That's kind of what she has here in the city. He has, despite tough battles with the Democratic legislature in Annapolis, he has governed in the middle. He's avoided President Trump and all the silliness and foolishness that has come along with that presidency. He has said the Republican way forward is moderation. in cooperation, not enemies, and not foolishness. He's opposed the president on any number of things, and he says Maryland is flourishing in spite of what's happening with Trump. Now, there are some conservative, moderate conservative Republicans who see him as the kind of person that the party needs to move towards in all the state elections and maybe in the 2020 presidential campaign. Will Governor Hogan run for president? My general feeling is I think that's probably not going to happen. I think he loves being governor of Maryland.
On to Virginia. John Whitbeck, the former head of Virginia's Republican Party, as I recall, when he was on this broadcast and we asked him what his future plans were, he did not indicate that he intended to run for office. But
well, he didn't say he wouldn't.
He didn't say he wouldn't either. But so he is. He's going to be challenging Democrat Phyllis Randall for chair of the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors in November. We should mention that Randall is Loudoun's first African-American board chair. She was elected in 2015.
Yes, we were very happy, if I might jump in, that the supervisor, the chairwoman, joined us for my inauguration ceremony, and she has been
right down the front row.
Absolutely,
along with the Prince George's County Executive.
With the Prince George's County Executive, the deputy, the lieutenant governor for Virginia, and so we do have now. I don't live in Virginia or Maryland, and I don't vote for Republicans, but we look forward to working with all the leaders around the region for what's good for the region.
And John Whitbeck, who has been on the show a number of times, and he resigned as the state party chairman, he could not stomach the Corey Stewart aspects of the party, and he now is trying in Loudoun County. You know, Phyllis.
By the way, Corey has said, "I'm done here."
Well, he says he's not going to run again for any foreseeable future or unless something changes.
If you change your mind, let us know, Corey.
The state's changing. Now, Phyllis Randall did win in 2015, but she won in a three-way split. She only got 30-something% of the vote. Loudoun County, as much as it's changing, it's still the 9-member board is, I think there are 6 Republicans. But John Whitbeck is, again, just like Governor Hogan in Maryland, is a moderate, traditional Republican conservative who says you can't get lost on social issues. You've got to just make the trains run on time, fix the roads, do all those types of things, that he will not be a partisan hack when he runs to be the supervisor. So that's going to be interesting. This could be part of the Virginia Republican Party waking up to the fact that they have put themselves in a smaller and smaller hole in that state.
Just in case you hadn't noticed, our guest in studio today is Muriel Bowser, Mayor of the District of Columbia. We're taking your calls at 800-433-8850. If the lines are busy, shoot us a tweet at Kojo Show or email to kojo@wamu.org. You gave your...
You know, one thing we didn't talk about for Governor Hogan, just very briefly, he did his budget. And one of the things I meant to include is a 3% statewide raise for state employees, several $100 million more in education, more money in case the Kerwin report comes back next year. And so it was a very, not progressive, but it was a very middle-of-the-road, a strong opening shot for the Maryland legislature, and I meant to include that when we talked about Hogan.
Not very conservative. We'll talk about education also with Mayor Bowser. You gave your second-term Outlook address this week where you said you'd consider what you called creative solutions to some of the city's toughest problems.
In D.C. for giving us a second opportunity. I follow Marion Barry and Tony Williams in taking the oath for mayor a second time, and I take the responsibility that we have now and the opportunity that we have now very seriously, Kojo. In many ways, these are the best of financial times in our city, which gives us the opportunity to do some things bigger and to be bold in our thinking. And a second term really represents an opportunity to build on the things that we've learned and do them faster and bigger. So on Monday, we gathered, as we have for the 4 previous years at Gallaudet University. We give a report.
Well, technically, it was Tuesday because
Tuesday,
of the snow.
Correct.
A very good turnout, though.
It always is, because people want to hear what we've done the previous year. This time we got to talk about the previous previous term and the next. So my challenge, not just to the people there, but to all Washingtonians, to stakeholders, to voters, is how can we think about our work and think bigger than our own parochial interests, our own ward interests, our own special interests, and think about the District of Columbia as a whole. That was our approach to closing DC General, that homelessness, if we are going to end family homelessness and homelessness among all individuals, every ward of the city has to be a part of the solution. The same will be true for building 36,000 new units of affordable housing. The same will be true for improving the number of high-quality high school and middle school seats across the city. The same will be true for how we really change the trajectory for residents in Ward 7 and 8 who have been underinvested in, both in terms of their human needs and in terms of their neighborhood needs. And some of those things, the real message I wanted to convey is some of them require trade-offs. You have to give up something to get something else. And those are the questions that we deal with in government every day, and we're asking the community to come along with us.
There are lots of subjects that you're dealing with, and I want to talk about the overall politics of your relationship with the council. You won overwhelmingly re-election. So did all the council members who were up. Mm-hmm. You did attempt to defeat Alyssa Silverman in that campaign. She won overwhelmingly, and Alyssa Silverman even won Ward 4. I've talked to a variety of council members, all of whom say they all want to work with you on the second term, that they think lots of things can get done, but they still think you're bristle. Two of them use the word bristle separately. That you still demand you want your way more than compromise. And you said on this show in September that one of the things you learned in your first term was that you would be more willing to reach out to the council members, to work for solutions and get past disagreements. Where are you with the council members now with, now with Alyssa Silverman specifically, since you attempted to defeat her, but with the chairman and with the other members, how can we expect you to work with the council any differently to get all these things done that you have on your plate, which is a huge plate?
Well, my job is to lead and to lead the city and to advance an agenda and a vision that the residents of the District of Columbia elected me to do. And I know you are frequently concerned about how I approach members of the council, and I hope
and
that
how they approach.
Well, I haven't heard you talk as much about that, but that's fine. My approach with anything is to let people know where I stand, hear from them, and then move in a way that I think is best for the people of the District of Columbia. And quite frankly, that's how I see the members of the council approach their work too. And I do all that I can to persuade them to my point of view. And they sometimes try to persuade me to their point of view. And at the end of the day, both of our jobs, from the executive and the legislature, is to come up with the best public policy for the people of the district. What's good about our city is probably we agree on 99.1% of the things. I think our values, when I talk to members of the council, are almost universally shared. And sometimes we disagree about how to get there, but I don't think that we approach it with animosity.
Good. It's not personal, it's politics and public policy.
It's policy.
And policy.
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, I hear very nice things. They do say good things, and I sense, and I hear it, and I also sense it, that they in fact do want to work together. And I hear the same thing from you. There's just so many things now facing the city.
There are a lot of things facing the city, and one of the things that we've been tested by in the last 3 weeks is the federal government shutdown. Now, I'm proud in many mayors before me and members of the council should be proud that our city is resilient, and we're better able to deal with this uncertainty from the federal government than we ever have been. But we are being tested. Our people are being tested. 1, 2, 3 paychecks gone will test any family's ability to pay their bills. And so that's a true test for us. I think that we also have to be prepared for a future test, and that's if this economy takes a downturn and we have to deal with a recession. I've served in this government during the 2007-2008 recession. It was a tough time for the district, and I also reminded members of the council that we have to think about that, and that we shouldn't be writing checks that we won't be able to cash in a recession. And so those are things that, as I approach my second term, that I will continue to talk to my fellow elected officials about.
Okay.
People who are calling in and tweeting in want to discuss very specific issues. Here is Greg in Northwest Washington. Greg, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Koja. Hi, Mayor Bowser.
Hi, Greg.
I'm glad, actually, Tom, that you raised the issue of the relationship with the council. And Mayor, you said that you make your point of view known. But one thing that I've seen you do is with the Neighborhood Engagement Achieves Results Act, which passed the council unanimously in 2016, you have refused to implement it. You have refused to follow the law. And this is comprehensive public health approach to public safety, and came about in 2015 after an uptick in homicides. We're seeing the same thing now. And I want to hear why you haven't committed to this public health approach, why you seem to be doubling down on policing and punishment, what evidence you have that that approach works, and will you make a commitment to expand these life-saving approaches?
Greg, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Why did you tell our call screener that you wanted to ask about the Metro Fare Evasion Decriminalization Act?
I do want to ask about that as well. But
okay, well, I'll let the mayor answer your first question because we have a tweet
I think
about the second one.
Greg seems to not be following all of the work that we have done in creating our Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, which was the central tenet of the NEAR Act, which was offered by Councilmember McDuffie, where we have hired a well-lauded director of that office. We have put grant funds out in communities to hire violence interrupters, and are really pushing and hoping and making sure that this office has the resources that it needs to interrupt some of the violence that we are seeing in our streets. Now, there, as I recall, there are like 17 different tenets. I think we have already implemented a majority of the tenets of the NEAR Act. But I think people need to be very careful. As I said, when we passed the NEAR Act, that there is no one single solution to preventing violence. And we have to make sure that we're hitting all of those, violence interruption and conflict mitigation, creating opportunities, which we have done and we will continue to do, so that we are getting more people in jobs and out of the cycle of criminal activity. But enforcement is also part of it. If you are a victim of crime, if you live in a neighborhood that is plagued by crime, the last thing you want is to not have police presence in those neighborhoods. And so we will continue to focus on enforcement, and prosecution of violent acts in our city is also key to putting an end to an uptick in crime.
And you should know that if you had told us what you intended to ask, we would have let you on anyway. So in future, and for everyone else, please just be tell the truth to our call screener. Yeah. And since he raised that issue, I'd like to raise the issue that I thought he would raise, and We got a tweet from the ACLU of D.C. saying, please ask Mayor Bowser why she thinks people should be arrested and jailed for not being able to pay metro fare. Is that D.C. values? Well, I guess what they're talking about is this week you issued your second ever veto of a council bill. You sent the legislation that decriminalized metro fare jumping back to the council, saying it would encourage fare evasion and lawlessness. Why did you use your veto power on this?
I fundamentally disagree with the premise that some people should pay on Metro and some people shouldn't. We have a Metro system that has a system of rules. It has fares, and we should expect everybody to abide by the rules of the system. And I also believe that lawlessness begets lawlessness. And the last thing we want to see is our system descend into a system where people are scared to ride it. After all, there are many people who use Metro by choice. They use it to commute. They use it to go visit their friends, to go to monuments, memorials. And for a lot of people in our city, Metro is their lifeline. It is the only way that they can travel to work, to pay their bills. And so I have a sincere interest in making sure that we maintain a safe Metro system. But let me also say, Kojo, there's nobody that has done more for free Metro fares for D.C. residents than I have.
Did you pay to come over here on Metro today?
I did.
Okay.
There is no one, let me repeat, who has done more for free Metro for D.C. residents than I have. When I was a member of the council, I started a program called Kids Ride Free. And it allows every school-age child to ride Metro free. We've improved that. We've expanded it to the subway. We've expanded it to our summer youth employees. We've expanded it, I think, through council action to also job seekers. And so I would challenge people not to say to our residents, you don't have to follow the law, but let's say to challenge all of us to think about how we can target subsidies that make sense to residents that need it.
Well, what your critics are saying is that, specifically Councilmember Treyon White, when he introduced the bill, saying that 91% of criminal citations for fare evasion are given to African Americans. And so the critique is that it disproportionately affects black Washingtonians and criminalizes people who should not be considered criminals.
I could only say it's disproportionate if I knew the total of offenses. And so if we're saying that, I don't know that anyone has provided that information of who are the fare evaders. So I think the better question is, how can we target our subsidy programs toward people who need it?
Well, Metro's on fare evading on the bus. They keep records of that, and I think that's where some of those statistics come from. I talked to Charles Allen this morning from the D.C. Council, and he says the problem with criminally arresting people, and they do have statistics. They do arrest people. Is that and they're principally African Americans? Is that
but as far as I know, has anybody ever been prosecuted for it? Not as far as I know.
Well, whether you're prosecuted or not, you now as a
young
have
a criminal record.
You have a criminal record, which is an issue.
Well, speaking of that, arrest records and other records that can be sealed or expunged, we have a bill in the council, in the committee on the judiciary, that will deal with that not only for fare evaders, but for other people who have had an interaction with the courts or with the police. It's an important bill for the district. And so what I think that all of our attention would be better spent on how we can have a comprehensive record sealing bill and get it out of the council.
Well, I asked Mr. Allen about that also, and he said that part of the problem is that it's better to up front not charge someone rather than make them go through the process of having a lawyer and trying to have their record expunged or even have it done by the city.
Well, I gotta say, Tom, what's really poor policymaking is when you create laws that are totally unenforceable, and you put the people who are in charge with public safety in the quandary of not knowing how to do their jobs. And that's what the current bill before that the council has passed does. Okay. They pass a civil infraction, and there's no enforcement mechanism for it. Our own Attorney General's criminal division has said that as well. And so there may be ways to fix it, to introduce, instead of this ticket, a summons that requires the person who has evaded the fare to go to court. But the way it is now is unenforceable for our law enforcement. And this is what happens. Okay. And this is my concern. When you tell police officers and when you tell the station managers, your experience in doing your job doesn't matter because we have told everybody you don't have to pay, then they begin not to care. And when you have personnel down in those conditions that feel like they can't do their jobs and the system is run amok, then that's bad for everybody. That's not just bad. And, I appreciate caring about not having people have arrest records who have evaded the fare. I appreciate that. But I think there's a more targeted way to deal with it.
I want to remind everyone we're about now halfway through the show. We have not yet talked about affordable housing. We haven't talked about education. Homicide. We haven't talked about traffic congestion. We haven't talked about a lot of things, and they're call us to. So everyone, please try to keep your remarks as brief as possible.
I'm going to summarize this. The council member, Allen, says that the council on Tuesday will override your veto, and that will go into effect. He and some others also suggested that as the leader of the city, you also have to be aware of what Maryland and Virginia and Metro, none of whom like this law, and so you're trying to represent, you have to keep good relations with all of them and object to it. And he also suggested to me, he says, the Metro had a Fort Totten pilot program where they changed their fare gates, which are awfully small, and changed them ever slightly, not New York gates, but small, and fare dropped 90%. A fare evasion.
And then you can talk to some riders who will say some of the people jump over, some of them push through, making contact with them on the way. It's an untenable. It's an untenable situation, and I don't really know what you meant by that comment, but
which one
about relations with Maryland and Virginia? We all have.
Well, they all object to the law.
Okay.
Here's a question about affordable housing from Chris in Washington. Chris, you got us back on track. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Real quick, Mayor Bowser, thank you for being on the show today, and congrats on your second term. My question is, you are building lots of housing, and you're touting all of the affordable housing being built. When you dig down to the stats, it looks like most of that housing are for single professionals, and so very, very little family-size units. And because we're based on a policy citywide that includes the two wealthiest counties in the nation in terms of defining affordability, that's Montgomery County and Fairfax County, the level of affordability, what's being built, the rents are at kind of the middle income.
Okay, got to get to a question. Got to get to a question.
We need to get down, I guess, would you consider this year changing that policy to get to D.C. levels, if better yet, ward level affordability, so we can and build more family size units?
I think, Chris, we are interested in any possible solution that will help us get to 36,000 new units by 2025. And I think that we have been very focused on 30% and below of AMI in my 4 years, where we have gotten over $100 million out of the Housing Production Trust Fund every year, which is double what it was when I became mayor. Every year, and put 6,000 units in the pipeline. We won't be able to meet our goals with our current tools. And so we have to think bigger and more creative about how we get more units, and not just in 30% and below. I don't want to take away from what we're doing in 30% and below, but we also have to figure out how to incentivize workforce housing for people who are teachers and police officers and firefighters who are working and still need access to units that have bhan subsidized.
More specifically, Renee tweets in, given that the mayor says she wants to increase housing affordable to working class people, why does she promote a $56 million TIF for Mid-Cities development at Brookland Manor, which will result in the reduction of affordable units?
We want to continue to build housing in Ward 5 and in a lot of units in Ward 5. And what we know is that property, it needs a fresh start. People there need to have investment in that community, come back to that community, and I don't recall off the top the number of units that are going to be produced there.
Your investment in housing is one of your principal things you've done in the last 4 years,
yes.
And you've also said in your new State of the District speech or inaugural speech that we've got to do maybe something about changes to the height limit, changing density zoning. I think the point is the city is growing rapidly, and the city has to respond more quickly to make space available for the kind of housing, low income, moderate income, workforce, all the housing we need.
Well,
Is that right? Do I have that right?
Well, Tom, this is a point that I want to re-emphasize is that I can't go anywhere without people talking to me about affordability. They love what's happening in the city, but they are rightly concerned that they won't be able to continue to afford to live here. And so the point is, we can't say we want more affordability. We want more housing units and not do anything differently. I'm telling you, we can produce 6,000 to 10,000 units in 4 years with our current tools. But to get to 36,000 units, we're going to need new tools. And so my challenge to everybody is we have to think more aggressively about how we get to those units.
And there would be changes maybe in the comprehensive plan, but would there be legislation we can look forward to seeing from you on some of this?
Well, I think what we know that we have the Housing Production Trust Fund that works for a certain band of new housing production. We know that and everyone who said, if you probably covered that marathon comprehensive plan hearing. Couple of hundred witnesses that said they want more of an emphasis on affordable housing on one side. On the other side, they say, well, not in my neighborhood. Don't affect the way my neighborhood looks. So we have to have a real conversation about how we move our city forward for more units, because you can't say you want more units and then also say you don't want anything to change.
Minneapolis changed all single-family zoning, and in any place in Minneapolis now you can have up to 3 dwelling units. They got rid of single-family zoning. Let's see if that happens in the district.
Well, let's start by breaking up the goal, right? And guys, this is what I know can work. If we say and we break up that 36,000 units and we look across our city to find out where we can have more units, we can set a plan to get there, and we can do it by 2025.
When the district adopted the Vision Zero program to address pedestrian and cyclist safety, you set a goal to end traffic death by the year 2024, but the number of traffic fatalities in 2018 increased by 13% from 2017. What accounts for this? And I know you think the Vision Zero approach needs, if not to change, to be certainly overhauled. You picked Linda Bailey to head the new Vision Zero office, which is opening in March. She's got a lot of experience in transportation policy, helped to implement New York's Vision Zero policy. What do you hope and expect will be done differently?
Well, we want people to be safer, whether they're driving in cars, on bikes, on foot, using Metro.
Why is it not working so far?
Well, we're talking about any traffic death is troubling.
One too many.
And we're not talking about increased numbers we have a small number, so any increase represents a percentage increase, like you mentioned. And so our focus will be how we can make our education efforts more robust so that people aren't distracted when they're driving, so that they slow down and they're not speeding, so that we harden our infrastructure. And some of our infrastructure changes are easy to implement, like the no turn on reds that we will implement across the city. Others would be some of the bollards that we're going to put up around certain intersections as well. And some of them are more difficult because they require changes in the roadway, which are multi-year projects. And that's important too. Now, we also get criticized sometimes because we want to make our fines indicative of our desire to make our roads safer. I would make an analogy to the other situation we talked about, but the truth is, you don't have to get a big ticket if you slow down, if you follow the rules. And so many people are supportive of stiff fines to get the behavior that we want.
Yeah, one thing is that, like blocking the bike lane is now $150 which trucks use them as parking spots.
I knew he'd bring that up.
$500
Right.
if someone blows through a crosswalk.
But we've also asked the council to give us permission to better enforce. Permission by a change in the law to better enforce those bike lane infractions. And we're working on that change that would make it easier to issue infractions in that case. But we also let's just face it, is a lot of the box blocking and bike lane blocking are deliveries. And we have increased deliveries here. I mean, how many times have you called Amazon to deliver to your home or to your business? And so it's tougher to talk about how we are going to make a better way for those deliveries to happen.
Isn't the
Our
bottom
guest
line,
is Mayor Muriel Bowser of the District of Columbia. Hasn't said that for a long time. If you have
There's
questions
no
or
doubt who
comments
she
for her,
is.
give us a call, 800-433-8850. If the lines are busy, go to WAMU.org. You can go to kojoshow.org. You can watch the live video stream of the broadcast there. You can also send us a tweet at Kojo Show. I did not have a question about this, and I'm sure Tom didn't either.
Can I finish up bikes? Can I finish up cars?
Go ahead.
Very quick. Isn't the bottom line that in a growing city that changed from the 40s and the 50s and before, that we can no longer just be car-centric, that we don't have the space on our public streets for all that private parking, for illegal parking, and that you are in the process of changing the way the whole District of Columbia moves, and so that you can make accommodation for a growing city.
Well,
that's kind of the overall
we need
picture.
to be. We're over 700,000 people in D.C. now. We've been bigger. We've been 800,000, but the difference is people live, work, and play in all different places, not just around the city, but around the region. And we're going to keep growing. We have a robust economy. We have a great quality of life, parks, culture, schools in our city. So we're going to keep attracting people, which is a good thing. But not everyone will be able to drive.
The era of a private car is over.
An anonymous listener emails, what is she doing to crack down on rental bikes and scooters being ridden on the sidewalks in busy downtown areas? You knew that was coming.
Well, we have talked about a disruptive technology that got ahead of us a little bit, and our DDOT is focused on rules that make sense, and we'll keep working with them so that people can ride and that we can all be safe. I will say that another thing that I introduced at our second term Outlook meeting was some changes to our organization, and we are creating a new cluster of agencies, a new deputy mayor's office that focuses on transportation and mobility. So those folks will work as a team to help deal with our mobility issues.
Victor wants to talk about an issue we have discussed on this show, and that is sharing our space with our rodent population. Victor, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Coach, thank you, and I love the way you put that because I do actually feel like I'm sharing it. Mayor Bowser, thank you for everything, and congratulations on your second term.
Thank you.
The reason why I called in is that brand new car, and within 4 months, my car has been attacked by rats. And it's racking up about $1,800 in the past 4 months. So
they're chewing up your wires.
Oh, they're chewing them up. I'm figuring the new wires taste good. They're putting out a flavor that really the rats love. On a serious note, what are the plans for rat abatement?
What part of the city do you live in, Victor?
I'm actually in Columbia Heights. Okay. I'm on the 11th Street corridor between 11th and Sherman Avenue.
Now, one of the big strategies that we've used in areas like where you live is working with businesses. We have seen a growth, unfortunately, with restaurants, which is a good thing, but also restaurants that are close to residential areas have produced this problem. We have funded compactor programs, and I've tasked my DPW staff, DOH staff, and the Office of Clean City in making sure that we're getting more and more of our restaurants to take advantage of compactor programs. Also, how they can store waste inside before putting it out, and we know that that leads to more effective treatment. But I would also be interested in you calling our office so that we can, and you can just dial 311 and ask to be connected to the Ward 1 coordinator in my office to make sure we've done everything that we can on your block.
I remember when Marion Barry used to run Pride Incorporated, and they had a rat patrol.
The fact is, the Norway rat, which has infested the nation in every urban area, whether you're in Arlington or whether you're in Montgomery, Chevy Chase, or anywhere else, the urban rat is a significant urban problem. The city deals with it as best it can. But it's back to homicides. Mayor, you've had another spike. And just as in your first year in office, you had a spike in homicides. You've had one now. I was with you on this week. 2 days ago, I can't remember, the days run together, North Capitol Street, where you did one of your many walks. You've talked about increasing the police force. You opposed an increase when Vince Gray proposed increasing the police force a year ago.
I've never opposed an increase in the police force.
You and the chief did not. His bill to
well,
make
the
it
chief,
4,200.
The chief at that time told City Papers loose lips, well, we don't know that increasing police community necessarily reduces
But he
crime.
wanted to do it by law, and you have been more flexible about it. But beyond, obviously, more police officers that you have a strong recruiting program. It's been very difficult to get people, but you want to make
it should be difficult to get police officers.
Well, it is. I looked at what the rules are.
Yep.
And you want to, and obviously want them on communities, on bikes, and as the chief says, not just in cars. But other than the policing and the long-term effects of more mental health and more intervention, what can you say reassuringly to citizens who are concerned that while these homicides are appearing in certain parts of the city, not all citywide, that people are concerned about it as much as you are, and what is the hope that it can be addressed properly?
Well, absolutely. And as I mentioned in one of my earlier responses, preventing crime takes the whole government, the police, but it also takes the community, and our communities have been very helpful to us. The chief is very focused on how to best deploy resources, how to get information, how to cooperate with our federal partners in investigations and in prosecutions. And we know when we do all of that from law enforcement, from intelligence gathering, all the way down to getting people in better opportunities, we will drive the spike down. But we cannot, I cannot leave this conversation without focusing on how we focus on illegal guns and how we focus on repeat violent offenders in our system, because they account for most of the violence.
The chief told me 60% of the victims of the shootings, people know each other. It's not random shootings. That 93% of the rest are people with previous arrest records. And he also says that we have about the same number of shootings, 530 to 560 a year, but they are more deadly. Either the guns are more lethal or people are better shots. But so there are a variety of things to this, just not more homicides.
That's correct. Yeah. And our department, they use data smartly. They use technology in a good way. And we have strengthened our responses with a crime lab that is more quickly and better analyzing crime, that has taken guns off the street that have been used in multiple incidences of crime, violent crime throughout the city. And we know that all of those things will help us build the cases that prosecutors can get results from. The truth is, if people demonstrate to you time and time again that they have a gun and they're willing to use it, we know that we have to get them out of our neighborhoods.
Michelle in Northwest D.C. wants to talk education, but specifically school safety. Michelle, your turn. Go.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor Bowser, for all your support of the schools here in D.C. My daughter goes to high school downtown. I went to a evening meeting this week, and I was really concerned to hear that there's some real basic safety measures lacking in her schools. For example, I learned that there's no locks on her door, so that should there be some sort of incident, the teachers are sort of helpless to defend their classrooms. And I heard one problem was that there's not funding to even buy the locks on these doors. So I wanted to hear from you, as such an advocate for education and safety, what can we do to ensure that there's basic safety mechanisms and protocols in our schools?
Is that exterior locks on the exterior doors you're talking about?
She's probably talking about classroom doors.
But they don't lock?
No, and not in, this sounds like a building that hasn't undergone a modernization. I don't know which building you're talking about, Michelle, but I will say we have recently one of our new buildings at Boone Elementary School. It's in Ward 8, where we have seen a prototype that we're very interested in, that unfortunately we have to plan for some difficult situations in our schools and churches and synagogues. And so our team at DGS and DCPS, I know, are looking at different technologies like the ones that we've seen implemented at Boone Elementary School that will help us. And I don't even like to say it, but what it is it helps us harden our system from an active shooter situation.
While we're on schools, Louis Farabee is coming to town on February the 1st, I believe, or close to it.
Monday, January 21st.
He'll have council hearings, 2, I think, during the month of February. He's going to be, I guess, will he be interim while he's waiting to be approved by the council? What do we need to know about him that we don't already know? Is there are concerns. It's once again, the school system is starting over. Will be aspirational. He'll bring in his own people. He'll visit the schools, and it'll be kind of feel good. But will he be coming in with hardcore issues of getting schools moving ahead, or are we just?
Well, that's his record. That's his record, and he has been a classroom teacher and a school leader at every level. He's been a very successful superintendent in a system not exactly like ours, but similar in size and in the type of urban challenges that urban school districts have. And he has been successful in focusing, especially on transforming at the high school level. Now, certainly, any change, and do I wish we didn't have a interruption and kind of focus, but we did, and we were able to recruit a fantastic superintendent, and I'm looking forward to his leadership.
We only have about 4 minutes left, so there are a number of issues that people want to address. So quickly, Alan in Adams Morgan, you're on the air.
Hello, Mayor Bowser. I think we all understand why you'd want D.C. to gain control of the land around RFK Stadium from the federal government, but your public statements suggest that you want to develop the infrastructure there as a giant indirect subsidy to Dan Snyder, so he'll bring the Redskins to RFK. And we've got such enormous public needs all over D.C., including infrastructure needs.
Got it. Mayor Bowser.
Yes.
Could you respond to the...
Yes. Well, he didn't get to his question.
Okay, well,
but
Alan, you got about...
No, he doesn't. I know what his question... I know, Alan. His question... people are afraid that you're going to turn that part of the city over to Dan Snyder, who will build a football stadium and a hotel or other stuff and undercut what people want over there. I think he's asking, what are we going to be doing about RFK? Are you still aggressively trying to get
I'm still aggressively trying to get it, as I have been from day one, to get control of the site. Because I knew we would be at this day. And this day is that we're no longer using the stadium itself. We built our own stadium. Our soccer team has moved. And now we just have 50 acres, I think, of asphalt in a dilapidated building that has the name of an American hero on it. And that's not a position you want to be in as the D.C. mayor. So we have been aggressive about getting control of the land for longer than our current lease and getting a covenant removed to allow us to have mixed-use development. Because the only thing, quite frankly, that can be developed there right now with our current lease is more sports uses. And so I would never support a plan that was only a stadium. And it's enough land there to have a mix of uses, neighborhood serving, destination, and contribute to our enjoyment of the Anacostia.
Everything that the people who live in that area need or want can be accommodated. Then we can have a discussion about the team coming here, its name, and how it would fit in or not fit
right.
in.
And what I've said from the beginning, Tom, is first things first. We've got to get the land. Without the land, that discussion is moot.
Healthcare east of the river. Here's Connie in Silver Spring. Connie, go.
Thank you. Mayor Bowser, my question is there an actual plan for pregnant women east of the river in order to obtain emergency care? Because right now, as a healthcare provider down there, it seems like their only options are to actually identify that they're having an emergency, which a lot of people don't realize is happening at the time, which is why they seek out care.
Okay, we only have about a minute and a half left, so allow me to have the mayor respond.
It sounds like Connie was asking how do we get kind of the comprehensive state-of-the-art facilities in Ward 7 and 8 that our neighborhoods and people in Ward 7 and 8 deserve. I think we're working on building a new hospital at St. Elizabeth's and getting to an agreement with George Washington University, and that remains a work in progress. But we share Connie's urgent concern that people have access to specialists, not just a hospital, but the specialty care that they need for high-risk pregnancies, which unfortunately there's a high incidence of high-risk pregnancies.
Less than a minute.
Oh, I'll give you some credit here. We've had snow this week. We might get some more snow this week.
John emails, how do you expect people who don't shovel their walkways and stairs to obey the shoveling laws when the fine is $25 for residential, but it costs $35 to $50 to hire someone to shovel?
Yeah, but also the fact is, this has been a terrible thing for previous mayors. You've avoided it so far. People are, I think, once in the past 4 years. You've done pretty well. The city has done pretty well with snow.
Mm-hmm. I take this approach to snow. I think it's my job to get the city open, no matter how much it snows. And so that's the kind of the charge that I give my team. How do we get Metro open? How do we get schools open? How do we get hospitals, access to hospitals open? And we just start with that, and we work really tough. I have a great snow team. They did a wonderful job this week.
Muriel Bowser is the mayor of Washington,
Clear those
DC.
Sidewalks.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Kojo. Thank you, Tom.
Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. Today's Politics Hour was produced by Mark Gunnery. Coming up this Monday, we'll talk to local educators about unique ways they've taught the civil rights movement and Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy. Plus, with the shutdown affecting favorite Smithsonian sites, we talk with WAMU's arts reporter about where you can go to reflect on the life of Dr. King. For my 20th anniversary year on air at WAMU, I've been popping up around the Washington region to hear what you have to say about the issues you care about. In case you missed it, check out the video of me interviewing street musicians at Gallery Place, Chinatown. You can find that at kojoshow.org/blog. And thank you all for listening. Any special plans this weekend, Tom?
Avoid the snow if there is any.
Hopefully, none. Thank you for listening. I'm Kojo Nnamdi.
The Kojo Nnamdi Show is produced by Ruth Tam, Mark Gunnery, Julie Deppenbrock, and Margaret Barthel. Our managing producer is Angelisa Schrobsdorf, and our senior producer is Mona Kashfi. Our intern is Sydney Grannon, and our engineer is Josephine Neonai. For past shows and more content, visit kojoshow.org.